Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. This video is going to be a little bit twisty-turny because I'm going to discuss whether or not the government might actually ease restrictions when it decides later this week. And part of it's going to start off with the way that the general public have been engaging with the lockdown measures, which is very difficult for me to see in isolation, literally in isolation. But there was a very interesting chart I saw that might shed some light on it. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, I'm not a behavioural psychologist, and perhaps I wouldn't be confused by this chart, I'll show you in a moment, if I were. But I'd have thought that people would have embraced the lockdown measures to a greater extent in the second week than the first. I'd have based this on the idea that some people would be slow to adapt. Fair enough. Perhaps more people would have gone out in the first week to get supplies of various kinds, not just groceries, in order to set themselves up before settling into that mode of working at home or furloughed at home or whatever. Also, peer pressure would surely increase as well, I thought, with people deliberately or accidentally failing to observe the measures, being gently nudged towards changing their behaviour. Or, having random people shout out of their windows, whatever. Then I saw a chart on an article in BBC News about the way in which life in Britain has changed as a result of the lockdown. And it contained a few expected results, such as lower levels of NO2, much less traffic on the roads, more calls to 111, which is the non-emergency number, compared to actual visits to A&E. I mean, the last one was particularly unsurprising. I would have to be bleeding pints, quite frankly, before I'd even consider going within half a mile of a hospital right now. Given the complete lack of testing that's going on there and the lack of PPE being used, I wouldn't want to go anywhere near a clinic or a hospital. But then one chart stood out for me, and it showed the relative numbers of people going outside for various types of mobility. The categories were grocery shopping, visiting parks, recreation, residential, transport and work. Residential mobility was up, no surprise there. Everything else was way down, again, no surprise there. However, the extent to which it was down compared to the baseline of like January, February, was less in the second week than the first. The blue bars are 29th of March and the yellow ones 5th of April, if you can't quite see that. And that means that fewer people were making an effort in the first week, doing so in the second. It might also make you wonder, how it'll look when we look at the data for the third week when that's available and the fourth come to it. Because if it becomes a trend, what that would suggest to me is that as the novelty wears off and cabin fever sets in, more and more people are going to be ignoring the measures and venture outside for reasons that they didn't do beforehand. And the government's going to be deciding on measures later this week, whether they tighten them, ease them, or keep them the same. Now, you might imagine that we can absolutely rule out easing them altogether, but you would be wrong. There are a lot of cabinet ministers actively pushing us to ease the restrictions based on the data we have now, not even keeping them as they are. And I would expect any complicit sections of the media this week to be pushing the nonsense about harm to the economy, killing more people than the virus running rampant. As for tightening restrictions, if too many people really are ignoring the measures, well, I've said before that the very worst type of government you can possibly have when you need to impose such measures is a Conservative government, because Conservatives believe as a fundamental truth that governments should not interfere in the way people live their lives. They believe that. It's ingrained into them from a very young age. Frankly, they'll have been sweating profusely at the idea of implementing the relatively light measures that we have just for a few weeks. There will when these measures were announced for 3 weeks, at the time I thought to myself, they're just doing that so that at 3 weeks they can review it and tighten them or relax them, but more likely tighten them. They'll certainly still be in place. It's not actually just for 3 weeks, this is for months. But there will have been people who genuinely just thought, maybe we don't have to have them after 3 weeks. And some of those people are cabinet ministers. So the idea of tighter measures for much longer than the light measures for 3 weeks will go against everything that they believe. So we might actually be lucky if the government even keep the measures as they are, even though I would still expect them to do that. But even though there may be some arguing that they should be tightened, I'd be very doubtful that they'll do that. And we've certainly seen some reduction in the rate of deaths in the UK. I will always caution, as always, there's such a large lag time because of the incubation period of the virus. It's very difficult to be able to tell anything about how measures are working for a number of weeks later. But the rate of deaths has gone down. I'm ignoring cases. Some people talk about the number of cases. I'm ignoring that as completely worthless data given our non-testing regime. But at the time I'm recording this, our rate of death is still increasing. It's gone down, but it's still increasing, just at a lower rate. And I keep seeing people trying to say that we're at the peak, but it's still going up. That's not the peak. And that data is only for people who die in hospital, where the care will be better if you're in your own home or a care home. It's possible to have the official death rate level off, but the real death rate still be increasing. And that's a worry for me, because we have no idea, because we're not counting people who die outside of hospital. So you could easily have a point where it looks like it's leveling off, but really it's not. And so what with people's potential boredom and increasing non-compliance with the measures, which, one chart's not definitively saying that, it's just a suggestion at the moment that we need a few more weeks to see. But with that, and a government that is potentially wanting to use any data, even scuffed data, to justify an easing of restrictions, we could end up with that happening and then a second wave hitting us, actually giving us a good kick up the arse before we've even recovered from the first. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.